Get the buses lined up, the teachers hired, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. From soup to nuts, I started a pre-K school. Okay? It opens in 2010. By 2014, we are getting fantastic data. We're measuring cognitive scores. So the cognitive scores, if any of you know, it's called the Woodcock-Johnson test. So Woodcock-Johnson is a test that you can use for 2-year-olds all the way up to 102, and it's nationally normed. Okay. Non-cog scores are executive function skills, off the charts. Kids come to us at about the 30th percentile. So if you lined up 100 kids in the nation, they would be roughly at 30th from the end, from the back. Within 5 months, they move up to about the 55th percentile. So what does that mean? It means you're going from Chicago Heights to Evanston. If you don't know about Evanston, that's where Northwestern is. Okay. I'm super excited now. So I say, this is great. We're helping Chicago Heights. I'm writing academic papers. But I want the world to learn about this curriculum, not to sell it. There are a lot easier ways to make money if you want to make money, but to help kids. I want to lessen the opportunity gap. So I started talking to policymakers. And this wasn't foreign because, like I said, I worked in the White House for 2 years. I knew a lot of policymakers. I started telling them about my curriculum. Feeling really good here, 2014, 2015. Talking to Bruce Rauner's people. I knew some people in the Ed department in DC. Guess what they told me? John, your program won't scale. I've been doing experiments since the early 90s. I was doing them in the baseball card shows. Don't tell me about field experiments. I know about field experiments. Why don't you think it will scale? Doesn't have the silver bullet. Okay, what is a silver bullet? Where do I find a dozen? Can I go to Walmart and pick up a dozen? Because I want to keep trying to change the world. And if these silver bullets, well, let's buy a dozen. We don't really know exactly why, but all of the experts tell us they have a great program. And when we expand it, nothing. The great stuff in the Petri dish turns out to be really, really tiny stuff when we scale it. We don't really know why, but we think it's because of fidelity. That's what they told me. Okay, what does fidelity mean? In this case, fidelity would mean we were giving the pink pill in Chicago Heights, and when we scale it up to everyone around Chicago, we give them a purple pill. So you're giving the wrong program. For those of us in the program literature, it's called program drift. But we don't really know, they said. Okay. Now you can imagine that at this point I'm shattered. I spent a lot of time on this. Great program. But they're telling me the world's never going to see it. So I started doing research in this area of scaling. And what I found right away is that this is largely a research built on art. You may have heard move fast and break things, or fake it till you make it, or throw spaghetti against the wall, whatever sticks, you cook it. I said, I think I can add science to this literature. And I think I can start to write academic papers. So I start writing academic papers. And I write a dozen or so academic papers. When you write academic papers, what happens is people in the academic community read it. And everyone else largely ignores it. So you're not going to change the world that way. So I decided to write a popular book. And the popular book is taking those academic papers and telling stories. That's how you write popular books. You make your point through stories. So my first goal was, is it true that what happens in the small Doesn't happen in the large. Right? Remember, that's what the policymakers told me. That is 100% true. That's what I call the voltage effect. So you might wonder, where did this title, the voltage effect, come from? It talks or describes what's different from the small to the large in the economic science of that. Okay. Whereas the policymakers had that exactly right, what they had exactly wrong is it's not a silver bullet problem. It's what I call the Anna Karenina problem. Anybody remember Anna Karenina? Remember the first line in Anna Karenina? It reads something like, happy families are all alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Scaling is the same way. Scalable ideas are all alike. Each unscalable idea is unscalable in its own way. But the book pinpoints the 5 major reasons why ideas don't scale. So that's what the front half of the book does. It does an accounting exercise about why things have failed. So the very first chapter, I go back to my high school days. And I talk about a program called DARE. Anyone remember DARE? Yeah. Just say no. Nancy Reagan, God bless her soul, she would come into the White House occasionally and she would always bring warm cookies. That's how nice of a person Nancy Reagan was. Back in the 80s, she thought that there was a drug problem amongst teens. She wanted teens to stop using drugs. So she had essentially put all of her might in a program called DARE, which is associated with Just Say No. I still remember vividly watching she and Ronald Reagan sitting in the Oval Office, and she would look into the camera and say, I was talking to some Oakland students, and they were telling me how they're using drugs, and I looked at them, and she looked at the camera and said, just say no. They did that nationwide. I remember when they came into my classroom in the high school, local officials, and told us. And I think it was Mr. Twiddell, again, bless his soul, who was monitoring my class. And I looked at Mr. Twiddell and said, no way this is working. I said, I don't use drugs, but I have a lot of friends who do. No way this is going to work. In fact, it might even get people to try it because this is so dumb. He looked at me and said, maybe list, he called me list, maybe list. They say that there's data behind it. So I looked at those data. There really was a nice experiment that was done in Honolulu, Hawaii. And it had 1,777 people in the experiment. And it looked really good. No flaws. I can't criticize it. The data were just lying. That's vital sign number 1. It's called false positive. At least 5% of the time when we do statistics, the data will be lying. And they didn't bother to replicate it and try it again a few times. If they would have, we would have saved millions of dollars. Okay? So that's what chapter 1 talks about, false positives. Vital sign number 2, I talk a lot about McDonald's. And I talk about Lyft, the Lyft membership program called PINK. Anybody remember the Arch Deluxe from McDonald's? I guess I'm the only hamburger lover in the room, but in the late 90s, McDonald's introduced a hamburger called Arch Deluxe. And they did so based on, they brought in focus groups. And those focus groups told them how much they loved the Arch Deluxe. The CEO of McDonald's put his job on the line by rolling that thing out nationwide. Guess what happened? Colossal failure. Colossal failure because they overestimated the slice of the pie who liked the Arch Deluxe. You can say, well, how did they do it? They're really smart. Yes, but when you bring in a focus group Who are these people who are actually going to show up? Hamburger lover, lover of McDonald's. This is not a representative group of the rest. Now, even if they were representative, when we ask people a survey question, would you buy this good if it's introduced? If all of you put your econ hats on, you should say yes every time. Why? Because you have an option of buying it in the future. You want it to be introduced, and then you'll figure it out later if you like it or not. The world is better for you the more goods that are introduced. So everything's working against getting the truth, getting an exact or good representation of how big is this market. That's vital sign number 2. Vital sign number 3, let's stick with restaurants and think about, we all probably know restaurants that have scaled and restaurants that have failed when they try to scale. I want you to think about this question. Was the initial success due to the chef or due to the ingredients? Because if it was due to the chef, a unique human, it will fail every time. Unique humans don't scale. So history is replete with examples where the initial success is based on a human, and then you try to expand, get really big, and you can't replicate that human. By the way, that's why CHECK, my Chicago Heights and Early Childhood program, is not scalable. Because I needed good teachers. It's one thing to hire 30 good teachers. It's altogether different to hire 30,000 good teachers. Impossible. And I need some level of teacher competency for my program to work. Won't scale. Restaurants that can scale because of replicable ingredients. Every time. This is what I call the situational features are important. Anyone have a smart thermostat in their house? How's that working for you? You know, when they were introduced, they were advertised as a new technology that will save the world. You know why people thought smart thermostats would save the world? Because it automatically moderates the temperature in your home, so you use less energy. Makes sense. When you look at the engineering estimates, they are astronomical for how much we're going to save. You could almost take on the climate change problem with smart thermostats.